So I want to welcome everyone to the book discussion of Doing Imago in the Space Between and we're on chapter 2, which is actually called The Space Between. And just as a review, we did the introduction and we did chapter 1, which was focusing on the space within. So I'm very excited about this chapter where Harville basically explains how the entire universe works in the first 10 pages or so. And I want to make sure that we have time to really bite into page 58, 59, that towards the end where he's getting really into how does the nature of everything connect to couples therapy. Um, but there's lots to highlight here, so I thought I would just go kind of page by page, and I would love to hear what stood out for you in this chapter. So if you want to start, you're welcome to start. Otherwise, I have some things that I'll highlight.
I,
Anything?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Anne.
Oh, I just want to point out, not to pick on you, Michelle, but that um, Helen was also the co-author because throughout the chapter they say we.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Harville and Helen. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I just want to
Yes.
give her credit where credit's due.
Absolutely. Helen was such a key component of the beginning of Imago and has been involved all the way through. Her thinking is critical to our
Mhm.
theory, and I can hear her voice in some of what is being said. So you're not picking on me at all, Anne. It's a team sport, and I appreciate assistance.
Team sport, yes.
Yes.
I um, just in the beginning of this, I recall that um, they gave, you know, whatever due to Jung and um, Freud, and you know, I know just enough and have researched enough, been a therapist long enough to sit tall and poo-poo Freud. The guy was amazing. That's all there is to it. And then Jung, building on this unconscious thing, and then the wave. I just love that we have a theory and practices that grow with and come from this. I don't know what else to call it, but this understanding um, of the unconscious, what's below the iceberg tip.
Right, right. No, yeah, I was thinking that too as I was reading this chapter, just how well researched it was and how it's grounded in many thinkers. Um, yeah, he definitely has given credit to a lot of thinkers and a lot of theorists, and um, I appreciate that. And he mentions Jung in this chapter, and as well as Einstein and Bohm and all these amazing um, thinkers. And, I did notice an absence of connecting it to other cultures or women thinkers or things like that, but I do think it's sort of like the remnants of what we're still dealing with. Um, but it does connect to a lot of indigenous cultures, and I think it's congruent with this idea of interconnectedness that comes from a lot of indigenous cultures. So, um, thank you for saying that, Bonnie. I appreciate your acknowledging, yeah, that we have a foundation of understanding that we're bringing into our techniques. Well, so I'll start with on page 36. It's in the second paragraph. Um, he's she, they say humans have a plastic, not a fixed nature, and then go on to say shaped not just by, but in their social environments. And I think this is a great place for him to begin with just saying that's the assumption that we're coming from. And then he goes on to use the term interactive agents, which I thought was great. I love that term. Makes me feel like we're in the Matrix. We're interactive agents. And talking about that, oh, good. Here's Iwana from Romania. So you'll get to meet her. Hi, Iwana.
Hi,
Hi. Welcome.
thank you.
All the way from Romania.
Well, from the UK actually, I'm
Oh, from the
originally.
UK. Oh, good. A little, okay. A little closer to our time zone. Glad to have you here. We're just starting on chapter 2 and talking about sort of where the thinking is coming from in Imago for the space between, that it's, we can reference it back to Jung and Freud. And I was just talking about on the first page how he talks about interactive agents that are in social context that a- shaped, injured, and transformed them. Oh, here's Aura. Okay.
That reminds me of, I think it was Harville who said, we're born in relationship, wounded in relationship, and healed in relationship.
Exactly. And now he's just linking this back to quantum physics.
Mhm.
Yeah. Aura, are you there? Hi, Carol. Hopefully I get to see your faces. Hi, Carol.
Hello.
So we just started talking about chapter 2, and um he talks about these interactive agents, that human beings, that we are interactive agents. So we're in the context of our social relationships, and those relationships injure us, shape us, and transform us. And he talks about a shift from knowing about other human beings from our memory and our imagination, which is where psychology has come from, is really working with the individual's memories and imagination, but a shift from knowing about other human beings to being with them in a lived experience. So I thought that was beautifully said.
What page are you on, Michelle?
I'm on page 36, and I believe it's the second paragraph. I was taking notes, and I don't have my book with me, so usually I write in my book, which I know could be like really bad sacrilege to a lot of book lovers, but
I did the
um
same. Good.
but I was that's what I was doing. So I believe this is just the very first page, second paragraph. Yeah, he talked at the top of that page, talk about human beings being interactive agents in social contexts that shape, injured, and transformed them, and which they in turn shaped and transformed. And we relocated the source of experience from an inner world to social engagement with others, from knowing about them through memory and imagination to being with them in lived experience. So this is on the very first page of chapter 2.
This makes me think of the concept of the relational space between two human beings. I had never even thought about it until I trained in Imago. I'm like, why don't we all know? Why aren't we all conscious of this? And it makes so much sense because if you think about how you feel with different people or different friends, there's a very unique relational space in each of those relationships. And some, I notice in some of those relational spaces, I feel like more like myself, and some I don't. It's like, yeah, it's such an intuitive concept. And I think couples really, it makes sense to them when we explain that space. exist. Oh, somebody, I forget who it was, but they do this thing with couples where you rub your hands together until the friction makes your hands hot, and you
Mm-hmm.
hold your hands like this and say, what do you notice? That there's like a dynamic energy that is invisible, but that exists there. And I love that visual for couples.
Yes. Yes. And I'm just going to try to do essence mirroring.
Oh, yeah.
But just I think it's so important what you said that we feel differently when we're in relationship with different people, and there's a unique quality to that space between us that we'll notice. And that it makes sense to couples. And you talked about the exercise where we rub our hands, and I believe Maureen Brine, that's who taught it to me, but I don't know, I think she created that guided meditation. And so then we're working with that space. Hi, Valerie, welcome.
Everyone. Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to see you.
Thank you.
Also, I just want to say real quick with a little humor, I am eating edamame lest anyone think I am just some kind of chipmunk over here. That's what's going on.
I love it.
It's all good.
Edamame is your lunch.
Part of it. Yeah.
You know what you just said made me think of this other part, which means I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit. It's on page 52. It's the fourth paragraph. One, two, three, four. Well, I might have trouble finding it. I'll write what I wrote. He talks about self as being an experience, which I thought was cool. So much of what they're talking, Helen and Harville are talking about in this book is, how we think of the self. And he's it's okay, so in conventional religion and psychoanalysis, self has been almost like an object, a separate and distinct thing with characteristics and needs, a definable entity that has an identity. Imago posits that the self is an experience that is co-created by the continuous vibration between the outer world and the inner world. And it participates in the cosmic oscillation between field and form. And that came up for me when you were talking about how we feel differently with different people, and it's almost like a different vibration. It feels different, and we feel different based on who we're connecting to. Hi, Leslie. Welcome.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
It's okay. I'm just glad you're here. You're blue. So we were just starting at the beginning of the chapter and kind of setting a foundation here. Um, there's two questions that they get to that I really want to talk about because I think they're really profound questions. And the first, well, okay, before we get there, this is a really great sentence, and it's on page 37, second paragraph.
I just want to throw in that you had said 52. Imago positing that the self is an experience is 53.
Thank you. Thank you. That's
Right.
important for people who are following along and want to find this.
Right.
So this is the second paragraph. At the cultural level, we see this as transitioning from an individualistic civilization focused on the self as a discrete entity, separate from and in competition with all other selves. Ugh. I mean, yuck, right? To a relational civilization which will support our experiencing our true nature as relational creatures by collaborating, co-creating, and cooperating with others. I thought that was a beautiful articulation of moving into this relational paradigm where we're moving away from comparing ourselves to others, labeling, othering people, to really seeing it's a team sport. We're co-creating and collaborating and helping ourselves find our truest nature while we're helping other people find theirs. So I think that's a beautiful beginning. So he asks two really profound questions in this chapter. One, the first one is the energy propelling this shift to a relational paradigm? Are we reimagining ourselves as humans or as like consciousness evolves? So he's wanting to really ask us, are we the source or the conduit for this shift? And then he goes on to answer that question. But I thought that was a great question. Like he's saying there's this huge shift, right? Are we the source or are we just the conduit for the energy? And then in the second, I wanted to highlight this on page 38. As he's answering this question, he's saying we are participants. You know, we aren't just a conduit, we are participants. He calls us creators or co-creators and cosmic citizens. I was like, oh, I'm going to put that on my business card. That we're embedded in the universe as a thread in the tapestry of being. Like, I just feel like if I started seeing everybody I interact with that way, as like they're cosmic citizens, they're other little threads, and we're all in this tapestry. Um, I don't know, I feel like that would just I'd feel more joy as I go through my day. And I'd be less reactive. Of course, that's easier with strangers than Stephen, bless his heart. Poor guy. Um, so then he goes on, they go on page 38 to say we cannot escape our cosmic responsibility. That's really a big statement. And he says the cosmos is evolving as a result of our engagement with each other. And we are evolving as a result of our engagement with the cosmos. It's a really beautiful statement. And they reference Schwartz and Woolacott 2019 as one of the thinkers contributing to this answer. And then the second question, is the universe conscious? Um, and Wheeler, who he quotes, says the universe gives birth to consciousness and consciousness gives meaning to the universe. So again, these are pretty deep. Like Anne said earlier, we could write a dissertation just on that alone, right? It's just so much meat on the bones here.
So I want to say, Michelle, that I read this chapter, I don't know, over a year ago, and the whole thing is highlighted, and I have RR next to almost everything. So the reason I came on to this is because I really struggled to digest this. I really
Yes,
wanted to digest this, and I didn't.
it makes sense. What does RR mean?
Reread everything.
Reread.
Reread. I'm just looking through all these pages. Reread, question mark. Yeah, so a lot of highlighted and a lot of question marks and a lot of reread. So I'm appreciating anything you pick apart that you can make sense of.
Yeah, well,
Explaining.
so Carol, just to see if you can digest this and what your thoughts are, seeing ourselves as cosmic citizens and participants in creating the cosmos and being created by the cosmos through interactions with other human beings. Like, do you buy into that? Do you think, yeah, I could
Yeah,
go with that?
I believe that the energy in the field of people that I'm with is going to absolutely change depending upon the people. So that makes total sense, and that we're all part of changing energies.
Yeah.
I view it as like that butterfly effect. I forget how that exactly goes, but
What impacts us is happening across the ocean, and if
yeah,
it's
like
happening there,
a butterfly beats its wings and then something happens across the world. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think
I
what,
yeah.
sorry,
Go ahead, Michael.
Oh,
I
okay.
think it's really important to acknowledge the shift, what he called, I think, in early in the first page of the page 36 or 7 is the paradigm shift from self to relationship, and what if when we bring it to the level of cosmos. I mean, essentially what they are doing is helping us move away from our ingrained and entrenched perspective of self-centric to connected to everything, and that's not normal. It's not common in
Yeah.
our individual upbringings and our individual um, experiences to feel connected to everything. We're our upbringings and our lives are pretty much driven to be connected to self. We're driven to see everything through self versus see everything and experiencing everything through the fact that everything's connected to everything. And to the point of the butterfly effect, something that happens in one part of the universe affects something happening in another part of the universe. And there's another thing that back to context in terms of, I missed your conversation of the first chapter, but I think it's really important that Harville and Helen are laying out sort of the building on and standing on the shoulders of giants, so to speak, and the evolution of psychological thinking through the focus on self to the focus on the interconnection between, well, in this case, people, but everything.
Absolutely. That's beautifully said, Michael.
You know, this is so timely for me right at this moment because I got an email this morning from a woman uh, whom I had seen for several years with her husband. They've been married about 50 years. So they're old like me. And the woman, and so I hadn't seen him in about a year. And the woman wrote with such a tone of despair and misery. And she said, I know you've worked so hard with us and after all the work we've done, and I'm just so unhappy. And could I come in and talk to you? And I just reading this and just realizing that we're all connected. Like right now you all are connected with her. She's connected with him. That we're all connected, that it just, this really helps me understand just a sense of love for the three of us, myself and the two of them. And I know I'm being totally inarticulate, but the
Oh, you're
idea is
not, Valerie.
it's
You're
just, there's
doing great.
nothing, it's like everything is great, everything is
Yeah.
great. Whatever's going on right at this moment, I don't have to fix anybody. I don't have to feel bad that that I worked with them for 2 or 3 years and they're unhappy again. It's just we all need each other and we all have each other.
That's right.
I think Valerie, you touched on something really beautiful there, that if you look at the setup of our chairs in our offices, and it has that triangle where we kind of sit on the outside of their relation, we're not in their relational space, but you pointed to, I mean, it is all connected, because I think one reason our work can be so taxing is because we use our entire nervous system to lead with a certain energy when they even enter the room. and when we're sitting with them. And I think that I'm thinking of all of this, if I zoom out from this chapter, it's all about energy, it's
Mm-hmm.
caught up in the weeds. It's all about the invisible and
Mm-hmm.
what's hard to put into language or translate into language, but we all know it and feel it in the room. So I just appreciate, Valerie, that you brought up that interconnectedness too.
Thank you very much.
I am not a therapist, just so that everyone knows. I took the clinical training first part. I just looked it up, Michelle, while we were talking back in 2018. So a while ago. But my whole life, I've been a facilitator of groups of people, not individuals or couples. And I have a visceral experience of everything we're talking about and everything that's been talked about here, because I initially started psychologically oriented, that in large groups, and when I say large groups of people, I mean 25 people is a small group for me. I worked with 60, 80 people, sometimes 100 more, from every walk of life and etc. But the point I want to make is that initially in my work with groups, I was psychologically oriented, which means in this context, if there was disagreement or tension in between an individual and another individual, or an individual and a small group in a large group setting, I initially thought I needed to address the individual and the individual tension, and the cause, what was in that person that is making this happen. And I learned over time that I didn't need to deal with that in any way, shape, or form. I needed to deal with the energy in the room, the environment, and as long as the environment continued to maintain a safe space, essentially, then those things that were ripples in this pond of 60 people dissolved themselves. And I can probably go on for a long time about that, but it was an important transformation for me in terms of working with groups, to experience that individual tensions and individual conflicts were not as important as the energy and environment in the room and of the whole group. And it just reminded me, Anne, when you were talking about the way your chairs are set and all that, we spent a significant amount of time, like we literally built an environment to bring these 60 people into. And some, put it on a truck, ship it somewhere, set it up in a big ballroom, bring these people into it. And so that the environment, the physical space, it was another transformational moment along this 50-year journey to realize how powerful the physical space was on the interaction between the people in the space.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Michael. That makes a lot of sense, I think, to me, that and it's a tenet of the couples therapy, is that we're really maintaining the space for the process to keep going, and to try not to interfere too much in the process, unless it's, of course, harming the safety of the space.
Can I ask Michael a question?
Mhm.
Um, I can't remember the words you used, Michael, but you said something. I don't think you said manage the energy, but you said, okay, you're not dealing with the individual issue or conflict, but I'm curious, like, what ingredients do you think you put into the space to help make it feel safe for those people? Like, when one of those conflicts bubbles up over here, what kind of energy or ingredients do you put into the space to try to metabolize it, I guess, or mitigate?
I shared a little bit of that with Harville when he asked, for contributions for the latest book about how to
Mhm.
talk to anyone. And I have no factual evidence, only anecdotal evidence, that what I started doing was simply repeating what I heard into the space. So I started mirroring in a minimal way, not a full dialogue with people, but I let people's energy be in the space and acknowledge them. And then that allowed another person's energy to be in the space, and then another's, what have you. And so that was one, but I really do want to emphasize that the physical space itself. So in the case of a large group, can we sit in a circle versus lines of people? Can they see each other? Can there was all kinds of things in the space reflecting back what people were saying. We had artists in the room drawing pictures of what people were saying. We had big screens sometimes with reflecting what people were saying. So, and they themselves would write on whiteboards and it would be reflected around. So there was a lot of things in the space to help validate everything that was happening in the space.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Um, I think this is really relevant what you're saying, Michael, as we go further into chapter 2, because the observer has an impact on what's happening in the field, that we're not separate from the couple that we're working with or the group. And they write, the outcome of communication depends on how I observe the interaction. It becomes what I see. And then goes on to say how we look at our partner impacts how they show up for us. And I think that's true for our couples. How we see our couples affects how they can show up in the work. So just Valerie's approach of like loving this couple, not taking it personally, just being with them where they are right now is such a beautiful place. And there's a specific um, thing, I don't know if I can find the page where he's talking about what our goal is. Um, I have in my notes, page 49, that our goal is to transform negative energy into open energy and then positive energy.
Mm.
So we perceive the conflict as negative, and it sounds like Michael is just trying to stay open, to open the energy by acknowledging it, not reacting to it, just like we are with our couples. We're just open to what's happening, but by being open to listening to each other, we now move to a neutral energy, which then can move to a positive energy. I thought that was a really interesting frame that was new for me. There's so much we could say in this chapter, but I think just to stay a little pragmatic, because there's lots of information about energy and consciousness and connectedness. But a really important question that they ask in this chapter is, where will the energy needed for transformation come from? And they go on to say that first there needs to be a cognitive decision to engage in the process. Are you available? Are you available for a dialogue? Or can we get the couple to commit to the process, just to be here and take turns listening and sharing? So that it starts with a cognitive decision. But then once we have that, he's saying the energy is generated from the moments of being heard and hearing, being accepted and accepting, being cared about and caring.
I find that when I work with couples who are, this session they present very disconnected, energy's bad between them, blah, blah, blah. That leading with appreciations is a must. And to language what an appreciation is right there. And have people don't know really sometimes how to do appreciations.
Yeah.
Your hair looks good now that you've washed it. It's not Quite an appreciation, right? So that to make sure that they're in this space of themselves, to be able to put in the space between something that is uh, not get rid of the negative energy, put in positive energy for openness, and get that mirrored and vice versa. Again, that space between. This stuff is so hard to water down and help our couple understand this in
Yeah.
order to buy in. And yet I know that I need to have the background in order to language it and to give them um, the cliff notes that will help them when the executive brain is working.
That's right, Bonnie. You're their guide. You're their guide, and the guide, the way you language something can help them get it and move towards that. And it makes sense. Sometimes appreciations are the hardest thing to give when we're dragging our suffering and pain into our sessions. Um, so yeah, and he promises to get to more technique and tools later in the book, but in chapter 2, he's trying to lay a foundation. And one of the things that I thought was interesting, which I had never seen before, was he breaks down the word consciousness. And I think this is on page 50, where he says con is the means with, and uh shissness, the end of the word, means knowing. So it's knowing with, that's what consciousness is a knowing with. And I was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting, I like the etymology of words when people break that down. Because we talk so much about consciousness, but that can be a really big term. Like when we're talking, Bonnie, you're talking about languaging. Oh, page 51. Thank you, Valerie. Um, it can be a big word for couples, right? It may be something we talk about in a workshop, but we're not talking about in our office as much. But it's something that we know that we need to stay knowing with the couple. Like we have to stay in our knowing that all everything that's happening, that there's nothing for us to panic about or try to fix, or that we have the tools to guide them towards moving that negative energy into a neutral energy and then moving it towards a positive energy.
I love that three-part directional, like I love that. That is really impactful. Mhm.
It's really impactful for you to think about it in those steps.
Yep.
Is there more?
Mhm. Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm really anxious to hear about moving it from neutral to the positive, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think that if we can just get people to neutral, and I think the dialogues and the stems help them move to neutral, that the positive energy is, and what he's saying is his chapters, it's our basic human nature. We are connected to the cosmos, and our greatest, we are, he says, essential human nature is full of aliveness, and our energetic patterns and deepest emotions are ecstatic and relaxed joyfulness and wonder. So they're saying, Harville and Helen are saying that our basic essence is this positive energy. And so if we can just move into a neutral position and we're heard and we're seen, we're hearing and caring, that it sort of naturally will happen. And that's what I've seen again and again in dialogue, is just getting the couple to slow down to listen and mirror starts to bring in positive energy.
So this morning I worked with probably the most reactive couple I've had in a very, very long time.
Ooh, lucky you.
I could feel the energy as soon as I saw their faces on the screen. I knew this was going to be a challenging session with them. I've never seen them look that way. And she fortunately said we're both angry at each other. And his energy was so huge that he couldn't control his anger. And he left the session at least 2 times, maybe 3 times. He walked out of the room. And I put my mute on. I did not want to hear it. I felt this impact of that energy and realized there's no way I was going to get them to be with each other, because she is far less reactive, and yet she was ramped up. He wound up saying he sees himself as a destructive person and that he has destroyed every relationship. And she's now 11 weeks pregnant. They've been trying for years to get pregnant, and she's 11 weeks pregnant. So the stakes felt very high. And so I had to really, really work on having him first calm down, go into his body, breathe, count backwards from 10 to 1, breathing, saying, stay calm. And had him do it twice before I had to shift his energy.
Yeah,
And
beautiful.
it was really, really challenging, but he finally was able to get to a place where he felt calm enough that he could hear her and mirror
Yeah.
her.
Oh,
And
wow, Carol.
it was really powerful. I mean, the whole idea of energy was what it was about. It
Yes.
was all about the energy.
Well,
And
and Carol, I want to say I make up a story that was also about your presence.
well, fortunately, I didn't become, I mean, I told him, I said, do you want to stay destructive? I mean, I didn't disagree with him. He was being
Right.
destructive. I said, and I said, you're going to fuck up your kids. I mean, I just,
Oh
he said,
no.
you want to do to your kid what was done to you? He says he's been trying for years and he doesn't know that he has a choice. And I felt very sad. So I wound up
Hmm.
moving into such empathy for him and sadness. And I think he felt my empathic energy and my sadness. And I think that is what enabled him to take it down, take it down, take it down until he was able to just hear her. But there was no dialogue that was going to happen there until,
No, because they have to be regulated
yeah.
enough to do that. But that's a beautiful example.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Um,
I,
I just like that we're talking about energy. I think it's great. I think that's something that is unique to our theory, that I don't hear in a lot of other theories, of seeing this, seeing people and seeing ourselves as just having energy patterns. Leslie, what were you going to say?
yeah, well, it's more of a question that for anybody, everybody. Um, and Carol, you kind of brought the question up, and is, I've had a lot of reactive couples this year.
Mm-hmm.
A lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to watch them as they get better, and then sometimes they have these like gigantic setbacks. It seems like just when they're really having some good periods, longer than
Mm-hmm.
usual, and then there's this sudden setback, and that it kind of sets me back, and then I have to re-regulate to bring that energy that you were talking about and just remember that, oh my God, I didn't do anything wrong.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
did I miss something? Like, why are they like this now?
I,
So and so then not to feel responsible and remember it's all in the field, right?
yes.
But
Yes.
I guess my question is, if everything is in the field, which I really do buy into in a large way, I mean, I absolutely do, like, in terms of like my overall view of things. I really love this stuff. I can't say I totally understand it all the time, but it's fascinating. It's endlessly fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
But so my question, let me get to the question. Hold on, I do this because my mind goes like that. Is there anybody, because I hear a lot of this like from this, well, maybe some people shouldn't be doing Imago, you know? Like, how do we discern that? Or is that ever really true? Because everything's in the field.
Mm.
Just to clarify your question, when you say some people shouldn't be doing Imago, do you mean in terms of couples doing
Like,
dialogue, or
is
in terms of
anybody
therapists?
inappropriate to do Imago therapy? Like,
Oh.
it's just like, because I notice like,
Yeah, it's a big
There's
question, Leslie.
there's
Yeah,
only like one couple I that continues to want to come back.
yeah,
See me,
yeah,
but I kind of
yeah.
did.
It's a big question, and I think that rather than trying to answer such a big question, I think it's one that I want you to keep holding because I do think it's an important question for us as therapists to discern whether this couple can receive the help that we have to offer, whether we can tolerate whatever would happen. Like, I think it's a great question that we can just keep asking ourselves rather than trying to seek an answer, which, you
Yeah, there may
know,
not be an answer. I get that,
well,
but
I guess what I'm trying to say is I think there's millions of answers that,
right.
that will be different for each person and each couple. And I want to just stay on track just because we have limited time. There's just a couple more things that I think are really worth highlighting in this chapter. It's so dense. I think we could have a second uh, discussion with it. But the
Mhm.
most important pieces, I think, come at the end of the chapter where they're linking um, the ideas that they've now gone through on this theoretical level to what we actually do in the space. And more importantly, I think why we do it. So he talks about what transforms couples. I think it's on page 51. Um, Let me just go to 51. It's at the top and it's bolded. We contend that what transforms individuals is ultimately being present to the other and experiencing connecting in relationship, not attempting to change yourself or the other individual persons. And I think that's just so critical. I think my
53,
page numbers are off
page
because
53. It's page
thank
53
you.
towards the bottom of the page.
Yeah, I'm not in my book. I'm in a Kindle, so I think my page numbers are off. So thank you. I think what just that's so important when we think about ourselves as therapists that we're not trying to change ourselves or the couple, but it's our presence that transforms. And it's their ability to be present with each other. And if somebody is hijacked by their nervous system, if they're terrified about being a dad, if they are telling themselves a story that they're bad, then obviously that person is not ready to be present. But Carol's presence can co regulate him to a place where then he can start to become more present. And so it's kind of an answer to your question in a way, Leslie, because it's like, that's what transforms people is our presence and also I think how we're seeing people. How we see them is how they can show up. If Carol saw this person in a certain way, then probably she couldn't stay regulated enough to be present to him, right? If her mind started telling herself a story that she wasn't safe, which that can happen to all of us, then it's harder for us to help that individual find a better version of themselves, which is
Or if
what I
I,
think you
yeah,
did.
or if I bought into his hopelessness, if I
Yes,
bought into his hopelessness, there's no moving forward with that.
exactly. And so that's why the work of the person of the therapist is so important in our clinical trainings, is to really understand ourselves, our triggers, our stories, what gets in the way of us being able to not get pulled into that particular feeling or a different one, and to really stay with what we can do. Because you really knew, Carol, you're like, okay, I got to lower the expectations here of what I'm going to accomplish in this hour, just because I'm going to work with the energy of what's showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of addresses what you were asking, Leslie, is that you can't immediately jump into the dialogue. I believe the dialogue process with everyone, that you need to create a context energetically for them to
Hmm.
be able to do that. And I like I use props. I have worlds and hearts, and I, go with this whole story about crossing over and connecting and really create a picture for them so that they have the context of what the purpose is and not just go into the actual dialogue.
Right. And Anne was saying in the chat, sometimes there's couples that they just don't buy in, and there's not much we can do, because, he's saying the first step is that conscious choice to engage in the process. And, sometimes that is where the work is just what is it that these individuals might need to engage in the process. And us pushing energy sometimes, or us collapsing our energy in the face of that, like where is the middle ground of figuring out what their goals are, what they want to accomplish, what has worked for them, what wouldn't work for them, especially early on. But yeah, some people just don't want to engage in the process. And he talks in this chapter, they talk about, I wish I could find the quote, but it was basically like, without consciousness and self-awareness, that we're not engaged with the field. We're not connected. I'll see if I can find it. But on this page, I just think they're really talking about, well, this, he's talking about I and thou and the space between, right? And that this is where we're working. And they say it's not generated by the couple. The space between isn't generated by the couple. The space between generates them. And I had a question about that. I'm like, that, I understand, like, the space creates the couple and the couple creates the space. But actually Harville will say no, the space is generates the couple. So I want to talk to him about that. Like, what? Tell me more about that. But what he says is that they influence the quality of the space, whether it's chaotic or coherent, but that the space generates them, the connection, the bond. I don't know. I want to talk to him about that sentence. But that we can change the interactions and how they're interacting in the space. That's where we can create change. Um, on page, I have it, it's on page 58. You might be able to find it. There's a list of 10 key things.
59,
Um,
59.
59, thank you. Creating and sustaining a safe environment, identifying earlier life challenges and becoming empathic. I mean, it's a really great list of just kind of what we do focus on, that we just over experience so much experience in this space right here, just over many, many decades. We've learned these are the things that do help the couple move towards more self-awareness, more consciousness. And then from that space, they engage differently. Bye, Anne. Thanks for coming. We are at our time. There's so much more to say, but I think what we'll do is we will kind of come back to chapter 2 a little bit before we move to chapter 3. So next time, bring your notes from chapter 2 and 3, and I don't know. I think we should invite Harville and Helen to come.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you,
Okay.
Michelle.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great
And-
day.
And thank you. This was just right. Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye.
But
So
bye-bye
glad you're
for
doing
now.
this, Michelle.
I
Thank you.
know, I appreciate it, and I appreciate everybody here. Thank you.
Thank
so much.
you. I feel your
Bye-bye.
love. Bye,
Yeah.
Aura.
Yep, love to everybody. Bye-bye.